Good afternoon. My name is Alice Langford and I'm delivering the session for, I think it's 2:29. We're just about to hit 2:30. So I'll give it one more second, but I've just started to do recording now. So this session will be provided later through recording to people who participated in this, so you can re-go over any information that you might have missed throughout this presentation. So I think I may as well get started now. So this has been a very interesting and a very quick launch of a program. The information came to light, most of it yesterday, and it's been constantly updated, and there's still information still coming along. So this will be a 1-hour session and we'll get going now. So I think we've got a few people on now. So just to give you a bit of a brief, I spent quite a lot of time going through every part of the what's available right now, because they've released quite a lot of COVID-19 different kinds of grants. It started out as a state government $5,000 grant, and now the Commonwealth Government stepped in, so it's a joint funding opportunity for businesses who've been impacted by the SEQ lockdown between the 31st of July and 8th of August, and the Cairns and Yarrabah City Council areas between the 8th of August and the 11th of August, and any other lockdown in Queensland during August 2021. I've scoured through all of the guidelines, and I've also gone through a process with the client, a client who was wanting some help with it. So I see a little chat there. On the left margin. Oh, how could that be? My screen is partially blocked. Okay, let me just go. Oh, it's better. Okay, so I'm just going to go back one. Can you see that properly now? Just give me a yes. Is that oh, it didn't like that particular screen for some reason. Oh, okay. All right, well, we'll try to do the best we can. Oh, better when I move it over. Oh. Like now. Okay, fine. I'll stay where I am. I'm not going to touch a thing other than me. All right, so we've got the two areas that were locked down. However, it's, hang on, just one more chat. Okay. Wonderful. Okay, so it's now joint state and Commonwealth Government. So the information they talked about for a couple of weeks, and I think this was probably because there was a little bit of conversations and some negotiations happening between the state and the Commonwealth. So what it means is that any business in Queensland can apply if they were affected by or impacted by the lockdown in South East Queensland and Cairns and Yarrabah. So the grants, which were originally 5,000, are now between 10,000 to 30,000, depending on the size and eligibility and how the business meets the eligibility criteria for the employing businesses. So there's a bit of a distinction here, and I'll go into that as we move along, but it does not include business owners. So it's businesses that actually employ people and non-profit organisations. The applications opened on the 16th, yesterday, and will stay open for 3 months until the 16th of November. So there's no cap on the amount of applications they receive. Any application that is regarded as eligible will receive a grant, and we'll go into that in a bit more detail as we go along. Okay, let's see what this has to say. Okay, I don't know what's happening with the screen because it's looking as a whole thing. I can try to put this into a different type of format. I don't know what's going wrong here. Is that any better? Anyway, we'll just, great. Okay. So there is a new grant. Sorry. Okay, I'm going to ignore that. So new grants, there's $1,000 for non-employing sole traders. And there's a little bit of a situation with that as well, because we have Centrelink that's offering disaster recovery payments, but they're telling us, telling small non-employing sole traders to go to the state government first. And if they're not eligible there, then they can go to Centrelink. There is new information currently still in process of being updated online. And just to recap, it's not restricted to the lockdown areas of just the South East Queensland area or the Cairns area. New South Wales, I would imagine there's a New South Wales government, so you'd have to go to the New South Wales state government, and there's also small business advisory service providers in state in New South Wales, but they will have, it seems as though, I can't speak for New South Wales, but it seems like there is some packages that are being rolled out in various parts of the country. So we're talking about Queensland for now, and so I'll just move this along. So the funding that's available in more detail, the funding that's, I'll be doing a bit of Q&A as we go along. So if we want to just leave the questions for a little bit later so I can go through this, but if there's something that's burning and you want to bring it up, put it in the chat by all means. Funding availability in more detail. There is, and I'll go through these websites with you when I'm finished this presentation. So I'll start with the presentation and then I'll go with you through all the different websites and where to find the information. So there's for the eligible businesses that are the employing businesses, there are 3 tiers of payments. So there's 10,000 ex-GST grant available for employing small businesses, so long as they meet the eligibility criteria, and non-for-profit organisations where the annual payroll is less than 1.3 million. And there's a $15,000 grant for eligible medium-sized businesses with annual payroll between 1.3 million and 10 million. And then there's a $30,000 grant to employing large, so these are the large size tourism and hospitality focused businesses and non-for-profits with an annual payroll of greater than 10 million. So again, it'll all depend on what eligibility. So when we talk about an employing business, the eligibility, the eligibility for Queensland funding, the one through the website that I'll go through with you, is that it's Queensland headquarter-based businesses that have been trading in Queensland since the 30th of June 2021. The business turnover is a minimum of 75,000, so it could be in either 2018 to 2019 year, 2019 to 2020 year, or the 2020 to 21 financial year, with a maximum 10 million in payroll, unless it's a large business, as mentioned earlier, that's an identified tourism and hospitality sector business. It can be a newer business if you've started later than that, and if you can demonstrate that you will reach the 75,000 threshold in this financial year, and we'll go through that because it's in the frequently asked questions and guidelines. Must have an active ABN. It does link in with the national ABN service online, and it must be registered for GST, even though the grant does not include GST. And the grant itself is assessable as taxable income. So that is also in the FAQ. Yep, what have we got here? Now, this has been a very good question, and I would like to cover off on that a little bit later, because there is something that's coming up and we're waiting to get more clarity around the $1,000 grants, because there are a lot of people, they're still trying to get a definition of the non-employing sole trader type business. So whether that includes the companies, that has not been released as yet. So, sorry, I just wanted to get, because when you actually go into the application form, it asks you very specifically if you employ people other than yourselves as directors. So, and it expects you to put a number in there. So, so in answer to what's in the application form, it just does ask you for the employing staff, how many you employ outside of the directors. You must demonstrate payroll records and financials. So there must be some information if you've got it from your accountant. And there is an accountant's letter that you can provide that will provide the information that they need. Or if you've got information where you've got your letter from the tax office to say you've earned this much income per year. Just go to this next page. I'll cover off on that Q&A a little bit later. So I'm just trying to remove that off the screen, but I can't. Yeah, this is the whole issue. The team of contractors, again, a lot of people are in that boat, and we don't know if they're going to do any adjustments to that, because there are quite a lot of companies that do engage only contractors and don't employ people as an employee per se under payroll. So this is, there's still some clarity still needs to be sought from the government, and that would be something to take to the government because it's not very specific. It says at the time of applying, again, I will go through this a little bit later, but there are some grey areas still yet to be clarified. And that's probably the biggest grey area there is with this application, with this grant funding at the present time. So where we talk about demonstrating the business was directly or indirectly affected by a lockdown event, direct impact refers to businesses that must not have operated a specific, must not operate as specified in the lockdown events, can self-declare the impact on their turnover in the application form. So what directly impacted means is it refers to the government definition. So I'll go into that as well because I've got that information on another screen. Indirect impact means those that are able to operate for a limited purpose during the lockdown or whose activities are not specified in the health directions for the lockdown events, but are impacted by lockdown, are located outside of the lockdown areas and must provide evidence to show a reduction in turnover of more than 30%. So that will be in the guidelines, and they must demonstrate or declare a reduction in turnover of 30% or more during a nominated 7-day period, which must include at least one full day of a lockdown event when compared against the turnover achieved by the entity during the same 7-day period in 2019. So it's very similar to adaptation grants that were out last year in the sense that you had to do a comparison of where you were situated the year before. And but we're going back to 2018, 2019 financial year and comparing that month with the or that week, that 7-day period of lockdown income versus the period that we're talking about today. I'll have a look here. Okay. Yeah, so hang on, I'm just trying to get on to move these screens. Something's happened here. I have answered that question. I will be answering that as I go along. So, okay. So non-employing sole traders Now, this is where there's the grey area. So under the Joint Queensland Australian Government package, there's a $1,000 one-off grant to non-employing sole traders across Queensland. If you're a Queensland-based non-employing sole trader, which still requires some definition, who has had a decline in turnover of more than 30% due to this lockdown period, you may be eligible for the $1,000 grant. And that is, there's no full guidelines out on that yet when I last looked. So you can register your interest and they will get back to you on that particular point. Yeah, so just talking about the 75,000 turnover. This is a very tricky one. Again, it depends on the question you asked. Yeah, so somebody has answered a question here that calling Q Rider and told not eligible since did not reach a 75,000 turnover in 2021. Although it does mention the previous years that if you had that turnover, so so long as you could provide information that you had the turnover, one casual employee, but she's still, oh, you had to change her employment contract. Is she still an employee? If she's casual, then she's on payroll. The only way to test, and this is where you have to test and put in the application to see what comes of it, because again, the information still isn't fully out. And when we were talking about this comparative year of the 75,000, and it's quite specific in the guidelines that it says that minimum 75,000 in either of these years. However, I don't understand what's happened there. So yeah, so what they're saying about the new startup, so just another attendee, how do you measure a 30% loss if we don't have historical data? They're saying in the FAQs, and I will go into that, so I'll save that one soon. So I'll just, there is some answers for those as well, because there is, again, it's a new program and there's a lot of questions, and it took me hours last night trying to dissect all this because the information just keeps coming and there's a lot of new information. What we can say, what's ineligible, is that any business outside of Queensland is not eligible for this specific grant because it's a Queensland and federal initiative. If you're eligible for the Services Australia funding through the disaster payment, then you're not eligible for this. However, Services Australia, and I'll show you the website later, says that if you're eligible for the payment through the state, then it's a one or the other. So I'll go through that. Business and not-for-profit organisations of which the only source of income is made of rents, dividends and or interest payments. So if there's no turnover based on some sort of activity, a person applying for an eligible business or a non-profit organisation that's already received a grant. So you can't apply for two grants for the same business, is what they're saying. That a business that has received or is eligible to receive a grant under this program would be ineligible for the proposed one-off cash grant of $1,000 to non-employing businesses. So, so that particular one, oh, no. If you've, no, this is to do with with the adaptation grant, that was before. This is a totally specific new program. So what they're saying in the frequently asked questions, and we will go through that. If you've received, it very clearly states in these guidelines that if you've received a small business grant or loan in the past, all previous successful applicants of Queensland government programs are eligible to apply provided all the eligibility criteria has been met. So just in answer to that one quickly. Okay. All right. Keep going. So responding to the grant questions. It is a fairly quick process, but you do have to be prepared. You have to have all your documentation ready. You should read these guidelines and frequently ask questions, and they are constantly being updated. The one thing about this program is that it's open for 3 months. And so you've got till the 16th of November. There's no a cap on it, because anybody who's eligible will receive the funding as it states. If you're not eligible, then you won't receive it, but there's no limit to the number. Unlike the other grants that we've had this year, like Business Basics grant, which is coming up, they have a limit to the funding bucket, but this particular one does not have a limit on it. So, so you've got 3 months. So there's no rush. You can take your time to get all the right information that it requires. The QRIDA portal is not the same as Smarter grants, and I'll show you the entry point into that. And it does require you to provide a little bit more information than a Smarter grants portal would. There's no sample application form that we've had in the past year, like we've had the Business Boost, we've had Business Basics, and we've had the Growth Fund. There's been different application forms and sample application forms, particularly for Business Boost and Business Basics. And so we're able to go through and go through question by question, but unless you actually go in there, which I've had a run through yesterday, I'm only talking from the experience of having gone through an application with somebody. So we don't have you have to pretty much go through and prepare all the information that you need to go in there. But what you will need is either your evidence, which would be your ATO information, BAS statements, payroll information, accounts, because if you're in a directly affected area, you do a self-declaration and you just upload the information. You need to be the applicant. Nobody can do it on your behalf. And you'll need to have all your information ready for the upload. And what we found that you need 2 forms of ID, which usually comes in the form of, you know, typical things like your driver's license, your passport, Medicare, that type of thing, with your correct name of the applicant. So it'll be a person, and accountant's information, if it's required, or the ATO information. So it's whatever you're going to upload. If you're going to self-declare, then you'll have all that information, or if the accountant does the letter that's been provided in the template, which is this particular one, the accountant's letter would cover off as well. So, and it also requires your bank details and proof of address, which could either be on the back of the driver's license or on a bank statement or whatever. You know, you'll have to have some sort of utility bill or something to prove that that's the business address. So the frequently asked questions can be found at the website, which we'll go through shortly, and you scroll down to the frequently asked questions guidelines and eligibility criteria. Some of the questions that came up, which are probably most relevant: do you need supplier quotes to support an application? No, because the grant funding can be spent on any business expense, and as such, quotes are not required. Can I apply if my business is new? And this was the question that came earlier, and I don't have a turnover for the last financial year. So in that case, as long as you've had a valid ABN as at the 30th of June 2021 or earlier, you will be able to provide other supporting evidence to demonstrate your eligibility. So they have some examples in the guidelines. Can you apply if you've already received a grant or loan, as mentioned before? Anyone who's successfully received Queensland Government funding can apply. Are sole traders eligible? Employing sole traders will be eligible if they're not receiving or not eligible to receive income support through the Australian Government's COVID-19 disaster payment, which is the Centrelink payment, as I understand it, from everything that I've read. Because everything, this is a joint Australian Government, state government, that's why it went from 5,000 to 10 to 30. So depending on the size. Are non-profits eligible? Yes, if they meet the eligibility criteria. Can you apply if you have two businesses? And yes, you can. So if you happen to be a director on 2 or 3 companies and they all meet the eligibility criteria for the business, so if, assuming you meet all the other eligibility criteria for each business, the grant is payable per ABN that you have. So if you have multiple businesses, each with a different ABN, then you can apply multiple times. Okay, this is Q&A. Can you apply for sole trader support if you cancelling at the end of the month? That's a, well, I don't know how long they're going to take to assess. If you cancel your ABN at the end of the month, it may not be the best decision if you meet the eligibility criteria, because they need to check your application form. And once you receive the grant, if you are eligible, then that'll be paid to that ABN. It won't be paid to a person, it'll be paid to that ABN. And then you will have to acquit that fund. So that would, so if you are, unless there's something happening where you're changing from a sole trader to a company, you may need to talk to the department on that if you're changing the ABN, but sometimes you can just transfer the ABN if you're changing the structure of your business. So that might be a conversation to have with the department on that one. And there is a hotline for those questions. And that is somewhere, oh yes, there's a 1300 654 687, which is all in the frequently asked questions and the guidelines. So is the application process simple? Yes, it is, and no, it isn't. Yes, it is, in that it doesn't take long to set up your profile. It does the first part where you register, and then you just have to authenticate it with your email address, and then you can go forth and start to complete the application process once it sends an email to you. And that's a fairly short period of time. And having gone through the process, it didn't take very long at all, because the business had the information, they had all the ATO documentation and were able to provide all that information. So if you have all the information that you're ready, it doesn't take long at all. However, you do need to have all of that additional information. Owners not on the payroll. My question is, if there's nobody on the payroll, then that may have to be the not employing sole, but I don't know. Now, I'll answer all this in a minute. How and where do we access QRIDA? I will show this all to you in about 5 minutes once I've done this presentation. Okay, so let me just go through here. Okay, other grants to consider. So if you had a store or something that had to be closed, there is another cleaning grant. There's a cleaning rebate grant. Details are still yet to be finalised. Queensland Government's offering for small, medium and non-profit who've been an exposure site for COVID. They will help cover professional cleaning expenses by providing a rebate of up to 80%, capped at 10,000, where a business is identified as a COVID-19 exposure site. So there is a link to that, and you can get that in the recording later. Now, other grants to consider for the future, before I start launching into all the other information supporting this, there's another grant in the future, the Business Basics Grant Round 2. So if you're not eligible, but you still need to get some money into your business, I would suggest I'll be running some more sessions on the Business Basics Grant. There's another round opening due for launch on the 25th of August, and we'll be running some sessions on that. The pre-release of guidelines of information is what is termed as a launch. So that's where they put up all the information about that'll be a Smarty Grants application, and the opening date will be on the 8th of September for that. That has limited funding, and that is a totally different program, and that one is very much, you got to get first in, best dressed. So, and there is a limited on the funding on that. And we will have sessions on that particular one. On terms of the round 1 basic grant, I've been trying to find out as much as I can from people, but there's nothing forthcoming as yet. And people that I know who have applied have not heard anything as yet. So that one, one would hope. I know when they had the adaptation grants last year, they announced people who were successful for the first round just after they closed off the second one. So we just don't know. It depends how quickly they can get through. There were around 3,000 applications that they had to get through when it closed on the 31st of May, I believe. Yes, so hopefully we'll hear something soon before it closes. This one closes on the 8th of September. Okay, so what are we? Yeah, round 1 we don't know yet. So that one, again, we'll have some information sessions. Who knows if they've changed the guidelines on that. Now, on this particular one, so I'm just letting you know, there's a disclaimer on this because the information is forever changing, but it's valid as at the 16th of August, and the guidelines are may be subject to change. If you do want to have a one session, you can go through Business Station and book in if you need any assistance. Now, all right, I'm going to go through, just move myself out of the way here. And I'm going to go through and show you where to start looking for information. So if you look up business.qld.gov.au, or you just put in grant schedule for business.qld, so this one is where you'll find all the grants that are coming up. I find this particularly useful because it tells you what's open, what's closed. So you've got the basics grant, which closed. We still haven't got any information. The boost grant, that opened and closed within 40 minutes. I think that one closed. This one closed within 3 hours. This one though, this is the one we're talking about here today. So once I click on that, this is where it takes me to here. So this is where it tells you it's open until the 16th of November. So all eligible businesses who apply for the grant, it's a joint Queensland and Australian support package. So it was 5,000, now it's 10 to 30,000. Now applications for non-employing sole traders are currently open, but that's not yet, as I said, it's currently being finalised. So if you want to register your interest, you just click on that, and that's where it'll just take you to you may be eligible. So you just click through and then you just provide your details, and then they will contact you once that information is ready for the $1,000 grants. So we talked about the available. This is for the employer employing businesses. So here they're very much non-profit. So we've got the non-employing sole traders. So again, this requires some definition because we don't know if it's just an ABN holder or whether it's people who've got a company and who are identified as a non-employing sole trader. So that's something we still need to get some definition. So you could register your interest there if you are a company, but you don't meet this particular one for the employing business. So here they're very specific about the 75,000 turnover and the impacting businesses. So again, these are the direct, the lockdown events are the impacted areas. And so the eligibility criteria, which we talked about before, employees must be on your payroll and does not include any business owners. So it does very much state that. And even when you go in the application form, it does state how many on the payroll, but are not the business owners. So now this annual turnover, so they're saying that recently started can provide financial records to show they'll be reasonably meet this turnover in the 21-22 financial year. So if you've got a BAS or you're showing signs of income increase, so if you started on July 1, for example, and I don't, you know, or in the last 6 months and you showed steady income growth, or it might have been you've been going for 8 months in the previous year, but if you multiplied it out, there might be some way of explaining it based on historical data. Now, when we talked about the frequently asked questions, that question came up earlier. There was one here for the frequently asked questions. Anyway, we can open that up. So if we go here, because this keeps changing all the time. So we get down here, ANZIC code is just your industry code. For these are for your large businesses. That's for your tourism, hospitality, one for businesses over 10 million. But we've got the frequently asked questions where you just simply download that form. And this tells you a lot of the questions. So can I apply twice if I have 2 businesses, etc. So this keeps getting updated all the time. So this was updated again, I believe, today. So is new and I don't have the turnover. So long as you had a valid ABN as at the 30th of June this year, and you can provide supporting evidence. Employing sole traders are eligible. There was an answer that did cover off on that. So yes, let me just go back to that. Employing sole traders will be eligible. So that's if they're not receiving or able to receive income through the government's disaster payment. So this one here is the COVID-19 disaster payment. And so this is the Centrelink, which is Services Australia now. Centrelink had changed its name to Services Australia, just in case you weren't aware. So this one, you can ask a question, but what it says here, if you're a sole trader, this is where I find it really interesting. If you're a sole trader, you should check to see if you're eligible for your state or territory's COVID-19 business support payment first. You can only get the disaster payment or a state or territory business support payment per relevant period, not both. So you need to decide which payment is best for you. So if you put into Google your COVID-19 disaster payment through Centrelink, I can, I've got a list that I've constructed of all the different links here for the COVID grants. So if you want to take a screenshot of that, or I'm not quite sure, I can put these all into the chat box actually. And if you want to copy that, that might actually be the quickest way. And that might be quite a lot, but if you just scroll through and just copy all of what's in there in the chat box, that might help you. Okay. Yeah, so when we talked about the period, yeah, it's a 7-day period. I've gone through my brains trust of people to ask the same question. So they're saying like in 2019 for that week compared to that week that was closed, you need to be able to demonstrate a 30% reduction in turnover. Okay, so if you want to quickly, it can oh, it hasn't shown up. Okay. Well, let me try. Maybe I just have to enter it. Hey. Now try that. Sorry, maybe you can see that now. It's a big long string, so maybe if I put them in one by one, might be quicker. Let's see. So I'm going to scroll down here. The Services Australia one is definitely important because you might be able to get the $1,000 ones. And you can also apply through the state government website. Oh, did everyone get that message? Okay, let me try. No, okay. I'll try again. Okay, I'm going to do this again. I'll put this to everyone. Oh. Yep. Try that. Let me know you've got that one. Somebody? I'll try the Q&A box as well. I can't really answer to that one. I'll try this chat again. So just, did you get that one? Yeah, I've just changed it to everyone. There's a cleaning rebate one there for anyone who's interested in that one. If anyone's had a shop that was closed for some reason and they're on the list. And these were the lockdown areas. So they talk about here. So it just sort of gives you what was shut during that period. Because they refer to this lockdown area, and there's other sorts of COVID assistance there. I'll just do this one again because I don't know if you got this one before. And that should all be able to help you on your way with that. So let me come back here. So when they talked about who was affected, this was the one that they referred to was the superseded for lockdown area of South East Queensland, direction number 2, which gives you all the definitions of how and where you were not affected. So if you couldn't get to work, you couldn't perform your business, you couldn't, you're too far away from conducting a business if it was non-essential business. There's a whole heap of what the restrictions were. So there's the Centrelink part, the cleaning rebate. I'll put that into the link. So that one, again, more information. It hasn't been uploaded as yet, but this will be coming to help those people. And if anyone does end up having an incident with having a COVID exposure site, there is some provision there. So coming back to here, yeah, so the non-employing sole traders, it's the $1,000 one-off grant to sole traders. So again, we're waiting to get some more definition around that, because under the frequently asked questions, it doesn't, you know, they're very specific that if you haven't employed people under the guidelines, that whether or not they'll regard a non-employing company who is operated by the directors as non-employing sole traders, that is something we need some clarity around. Medium size can apply, and again, you can apply if you have 2 businesses, large tourism businesses, and the evidence. So we talked here about that 7-day versus the 7-day. So this is where you have to provide, and I'm not sure whether it can be a MYOB, whether you state in a declaration, or the accountant can provide that in the template. So the template accountant's letter, which is this particular one, has, that's what you download. And so it has to be an accountant, tax agent, or a BAS agent who completes that. And the letter's fairly short, but they just have to provide that information. And the annual turnover in any one of those years, that is a national aggregated annual turnover of more than 75,000 for the financial year shown below. So this is what it asks on the accountant's form. So maybe the person who'd come through and spoken to QRIDA, that's what they'll be going by, what's on this form. So they're talking about aggregated annual turnover of more than 75,000 for the financial year. But it's saying in any one of those 3 years. So again, that requires further clarity. Total wages. So it'll be referring to either 1, 2, or 3 of the years. So you can select a financial year as well, according to that. And the accountant will be the one to complete this particular form, but the similar information is what you would provide from your own resources. So whether you've got some documentation from the ATO, some financials from your accountant that you can upload, perhaps some MYOB or Xero information about your turnover of a particular week compared to the other week. And so there's your nominated period and a comparison period. So, and the accountant may or may not charge you to do this. So that's something they would probably charge you to do this, I would imagine. If we have contractors, shall we use the commission paid equivalent to wages? Again, that question, if they're not on payroll, because contractors are different because they're under an ABN, and I've gone through this quite a few times, and a lot of businesses operate this way. They have the owners working the business. They, you know, whether it's a sole trader business or a partnership or a company or whatever, and then they have contractors working for the company or entity. And that question it's not, it has to be shown because there's a payroll system, because they've now introduced one-touch payroll into government, or you'd have to have something that states that you've got a payroll payment, as opposed to, because here they're talking about total wages and superannuation paid by the business to its employees, because they're really all about employees, knowing that that it's not just the owners who are the employees, and it's only for other employees. So if you're a restaurant and you employ staff, it doesn't matter. But if you're contractors, that's a different kettle of fish, because they don't get superannuation. But if they're under an ABN, they could be paid superannuation, but then that would be a question that would require further clarification from the department. And those, they're very clear about this particular thing. Where are we? Yeah, I get that. And there's a lot of people in a similar situation, and that would be, if we go here, there is a contact number that I would be getting in contact with. So where's there's a number here, because you can actually, anybody who can provide some feedback, the more the merrier, because that is quite a problem. Demonstrator payroll, so whether they employ staff. Now this is, I just want to go back to these guidelines here, because it says here at the time, to be eligible, a business or non-profit organisation must, at the time of applying. So that question in itself is a little bit ambiguous, because at the time of it complying could be anywhere between now and the end of November, in 16th of November. So if you happen to employ staff after, I don't know the answer to that. And that would be a question to go back to the department, whether it means if you employ people later. So you can contact this number on the guidelines, which is the 1300 number, 1300 654 687, or where are we? There is another contact number here, the CBSG at desperate.qld.gov.au. I would be contacting these people, because QRID8, you've got to remember this information's only come out in the last couple of days. So you can go back. I would be going to the department if you want to provide feedback or have a complaint. You can contact these people, which is desperate.qld contact us, or contact these people and just say to them that this is my situation, and the more people who are in that situation that write to them, that could be something that they could potentially take to their higher up people and see if they can make changes, because this will be open for the next 3 months. And it does, it is quite common. A lot of people who have had, again, self-employed in their own companies and hire contractors is quite common. So I don't know how they will deal with that. So in 2019, you had employees, you could put in that payroll, but then again, it talks about at the time of the application that you currently have employees. So as long as you have somebody on payroll, and that could be a question, I would ring that number and ask them, well, if I employ somebody I had employees and they're contractors, but I might want to employ one on a casual basis. How does that work for me? And see whether or not hiring somebody in the meantime might be a workaround. I don't know the answer to that, and I wouldn't want to put all I can say is that the guidelines are very specific, but then again, according to, as long as they're on payroll and you're paying superannuation, now what's classed as employment? So let me have a look. Where's these guidelines? So when we talk about employment, employing, so okay, let's see if there's a definition. It's employing to employ staff. It's not specific about what type of employer. They must be employed and on the payroll. So that is a question you would need to ask them and show them some evidence that they're on your payroll. It's when they require information about the payroll, and this is something that does require further clarity, because the evidence that you need to apply, so you apply. So require they demonstrate they employ staff. In addition to the business owners, evidence may include business financial statements, business payroll records, payroll tax return information, or a dated letter on letterhead issued by a chartered accountant. So either your accountant can provide that information for you, or you can upload that information yourself. Demonstrate annual payroll. So you could put in that 2019 information. You might have payroll records, but you have to demonstrate that you do employ staff. And when they talk about that, it's very clear at the very beginning of this, at the time of applying. So at the time of applying, does that mean at the time of the lockdown, or does that mean at the time of applying that you employ staff? So these are questions I would go back to the department, because I've gone and critiqued this thing. I've gone over this thing. There's quite a lot here. And this was done in a very short space of time. And I would dare say there may be some further refinements. And I would definitely be calling the department. I'm sorry, I can't really be much further use to you on this particular topic, because the information here, you know, tells you how to demonstrate it, tells you where to show it, and it tells you at the time of applying. But again, does that mean you had to have them employed at the time of the lockdown, or does it just mean at the time of applying? And that would be a question I would have with the department, and that would be something and they may update those frequently asked questions and come back to you about. So that is where you would probably need to call these people, or again, with that frequently asked questions, there's a number here. If you download that, I think this is the one. I'll put it into the chat box. Where are we? If you want more information, or you could email these people. So I would be contacting that. I'll put that into chat. Enter. And there's also another one through the department, because if you want to provide feedback about the guidelines, again, this was done in a rush, and more will come out, because even in the last 3 days, there's been so many changes. So I would copy those two down and call them, and those particular questions around contracting and employing, and whether you have to have them now or is it the time of the application, and you've had payroll before, those are questions that I would ask these people to provide more clarity. And can they put a little bit more in those frequently asked questions? Because there's really, they've covered it, but at the same time, yes, it asks, you know, the question before about sole traders. If you do hire, employing sole traders are eligible if they're not getting the disaster payment. But then if you go to the disaster payment, it tells you if you're a sole trader to see if your COVID business support payment first. So one tells you to go to one tells you to go to the other. If you haven't applied for this, then you apply for that, but you can't get both. So I hope that's of some help to you, and I hope it gives you a bit of guidance. And if you go to those screens that I've shared with you in the chat, I hope that's of some use to you. Now, does anyone have any last questions beforehand? Yes, I'm sorry, I can only go by what, thank you very much, Manuel, and I really do appreciate your time listening through this. It has been quite an interesting one, to say the least, because it's still a watch this space. There's still more to come out, but you need to keep abreast of this through this particular website. Again, I'll put this in the chat box again. You need to keep checking on this over the next couple of days. Again, get it done right, because you have got time until mid-November to get this application through. And just refer to that. But again, with that Centrelink one, I've put that in the chat box before. That's for the sole traders. But there is this one here, the QRIDA port. Oh yes, that's very important. Okay, so watch this. So when you are wanting to get in, read the eligibility, the guidelines, and then you register. So this is where you go in and create a QRIDA portal login. So they'll tell you about what you need. Oh, it's just there before. Create a profile. Okay, so then we just go into there. And this is where you just go in through here. And then you just start to register. And you go through a process of registering. So that here, it's under this QRIDA profile, which is on that page I just sent you just before through the chat. So yeah, I'll be doing another session on this on Thursday and another one next Tuesday. Provide these links when you send a copy of the recording. It'll all be in the recording where these are. If you can try and drop in now and just copy these parts here now, I will send the Word document with the links to Business Station and see if they can email that out to everybody who has been. But yeah, if you want to get on this sooner, I don't know how quick that'll happen, but I will send it into Business Station and see if they can send it out to the participants and who've been on the session. But if you can just go into this history where I've put all this information, just go in there and just copy it, you know, and then you've got that information. So if you want me to just give you a minute to grab that, otherwise I'll send out a list of all those links that I've saved in the Word document through to Business Station to send to people who've been on the session. Any other questions before I close off? We're all good to go? Have I answered everyone? Okay. Great. Okay. All right. So that's it for today. There is another session on Thursday. Thank you everyone for participating and going through this journey. Also, for any of these grants in the future, before I close off, you can subscribe to this website as well. So there is a place where you can subscribe for these grants as well. Thank you all. Yes. And if anyone wants to hop on again on Thursday, again, if there's any new changes, I'll see if anything new has happened between now and then, and there'll be another one next Thursday. Also be aware there's a lot of these scams as well. So just be aware, unless it's got a qld.gov.au or a .gov.au attached to it, this is the one you should go by, because this is where the information all is. It's the government. The government is the one that has the correct information. I'm merely trying to interpret it in the best way possible so that you can try and digest the information, because there is quite a lot of information there, and to try and make it a little bit easier so that when you do get there, just remember it is coming through a couple of departments are working with each other, but it's going through this login. And again, it's about getting that supporting evidence. Again, all the information is there. Anything you're unsure about, you do need to go to the department, and that information is found through the frequently asked questions. So thank you for your time today, and you have a lovely rest of the day. Stay safe, stay well, and I'll get that list of links out to Business Station to email out to you all. And if you want to, if there's any other updates, also there is the Business Basics grant sessions that'll be coming up hopefully next week, that they don't delay, because when we go into this area here, there is a grant schedule, and that tells us it'll be released on the 25th of August, but it was meant to be released on the 17th, which probably got pushed out because of what's happened with these COVID grants. So we're planning to run a session after the 25th of August on this round 2 as well. So hope to see you again at a future session. And in the meantime, thank you very much. Bye.